The porch light flickered again as I twisted the bulb tighter into its socket. 3 months of marriage counseling, and Mira still couldn't be bothered to mention when things broke around our house. My phone buzzed against my hip, the security app notification I'd grown to dread. I pulled out the device and swiped to the driveway camera feed. There she was, my wife of 12 years, stumbling out of a sleek BMW that definitely wasn't her Honda. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. Her late deposition had apparently involved quite a bit of giggling and groping with someone who looked nothing like her law partner Janet. Funny, I muttered to myself, watching Mira smooth down her skirt while a tall, well-dressed man adjusted his tie. I didn't realize depositions required so much physical contact these days. The man, mid-40s, expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, leaned in for what my wife probably thought was a discreet goodbye embrace. From my perch on the ladder, I had a perfect view of their little performance. The security cameras Beck had installed after our break-in last spring captured everything in crystal-clear detail. Mira fumbled with her keys at the front door while Mr. Expensive Suit climbed back into his BMW. I memorized the license plate, JCA 4471. Cute. His initials, probably. I climbed down from the ladder and slipped inside through the back door, making it to our bedroom just as I heard Mira's heels clicking across the hardwood floor downstairs. The shower started running a few minutes later, washing away evidence, no doubt. My laptop sat open on the nightstand, and I pulled up the security systems archive. Beck Darren, my old boxing buddy turned security specialist, had set up the whole system for free after someone tried to break into our garage. Insurance, he'd called it. You never know what you might need to prove someday. I scrolled through the footage from the past month. There it was, a pattern I'd been too trusting to notice. 12 nights of working late, and every single one featured the same BMW dropping Mira off between 11:30 p.m. and midnight. The bathroom door opened, and Mira appeared in a cloud of lavender-scented steam, wrapped in her favorite silk robe. "How was work?" I asked, not looking up from the laptop screen. "Exhausting," she said, avoiding eye contact while she rummaged through her jewelry box. "Janet and I were reviewing depositions until almost midnight. This Henderson case is consuming my life." "Janet drives a BMW now?" The question slipped out before I could stop myself. Mira's hand froze over her pearl earrings. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Just wondering." I closed the laptop and smiled. "I'm proud of you for working so hard." She relaxed slightly, but I caught the guilty flush creeping up her neck. 12 years of marriage had taught me to read her tells. "I'm going to grab a beer," I said, heading for the door. "Want anything?" "No, I'm exhausted. Going straight to bed." "I bet you are," I thought. Downstairs in my basement workshop, I pulled up the security footage on my main computer. Beck had installed cameras at every entrance, plus motion sensors in the driveway and backyard. The system automatically backed up to a cloud server, my own personal insurance policy. I spent the next 2 hours documenting everything. Screenshots, timestamps, license plate numbers. The BMW belonged to Jace Arnell. According to the DMV lookup I ran through a private investigator website I'd used for work. Age 42, address in the upscale Riverside district, occupation listed as business consultant. My phone buzzed with a text from Beck. "How's the security system working out?" "Like a charm," I typed back, catching everything I need to see. "Good to hear. Let me know if you need any upgrades." I stared at the screen for a long moment, watching Jace Arnell help my wife out of his car for the dozenth time. His hand lingered on her lower back, and she laughed at something he whispered in her ear. "Upgrades. Yeah, I might need a few of those." The next morning, Mira was already gone when I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting with Janet. Don't wait up tonight. Another late deposition." I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. Then I called in sick to the electrical contractor's office where I'd worked for the past 8 years. Tommy Breslin, my supervisor, Didn't ask questions. I'd used maybe 5 sick days in 8 years. Instead of heading to work, I drove to the Riverside district and found Jace Arnell's address. The apartment complex screamed money, marble lobby, doorman, valet parking. I parked across the street and settled in to wait. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. At 9:15 a.m., Jace emerged from the building wearing a charcoal gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He looked exactly like the kind of man Mira had always claimed to find boring, polished, corporate, predictable. Apparently, her tastes had evolved. I followed his BMW to a glass office tower downtown, watching him disappear into the parking garage. A quick internet search revealed that Arnell Consulting occupied the entire 14th floor. Business must be good. My phone rang as I sat in the parking lot, planning my next move. Trent? It's Mrs. Lacey from next door. Our neighbor's voice carried that particular tone of barely contained gossip. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I wanted to let you know I saw something last night that concerned me. What's that, Mrs. Lacey? Well, I was letting Buttons out for his evening walk when I noticed a strange car in your driveway, a dark sedan. The driver was, well, he was very friendly with Mira. I gripped the phone tighter. Friendly how? Oh, you know, touching, embracing. I'm sure it was perfectly innocent, probably a colleague from work. But in my day, we were more discreet about these things. I appreciate you looking out for us, Mrs. Lacey. Of course, dear. I hope I'm not overstepping. It's just that Mira has been having quite a few late nights lately, and people talk. People talk. In our neighborhood, that was practically a threat. After hanging up, I sat in my truck and considered my options. I could confront Mira directly, but that would only lead to denials and lies. I could hire a private investigator, but I already had better evidence than any PI could gather. Or I could get creative. I drove to the hardware store and bought a small GPS tracking device, the kind parents use to monitor teenage drivers. 20 minutes later, I was back in Jace Arnell's parking garage, attaching the tracker to the underside of his BMW's rear bumper. My phone buzzed with another text from Mira. Deposition running long again, don't wait up, love you. Love you too, sweetheart. That evening, I watched the tracker's signal on my laptop as Jace's BMW made its way from downtown to a restaurant called Chez Laurent, the most expensive French place in the city. The signal stayed stationary for 2 hours before moving to a hotel 6 blocks away, the Grandview Hotel, where Mira and I had spent our 5th anniversary. I grabbed my keys and drove downtown, parking across from the hotel's main entrance. Through the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Mira and Jace at the bar, sharing what looked like champagne and intimate conversation. She wore the red dress I'd bought her for Christmas, the one she claimed made her feel self-conscious. Apparently, she'd gotten over that. I took photos with my phone's zoom lens, then settled back to wait. They disappeared into the elevator at 10:30 p.m. The tracker showed Jace's car remained in the hotel parking garage until 11:15 p.m., when it started moving toward our neighborhood. I beat them home by 5 minutes, just enough time to get upstairs and pretend to be asleep. The front door opened at 11:47 p.m., exactly matching the timestamp from previous nights. Mira slipped into bed 20 minutes later, smelling like expensive cologne and lies. How was the deposition? I whispered in the dark. Brutal, she murmured. Janet pushes too hard sometimes. I rolled over and stared at the ceiling, listening to my wife's breathing gradually slow into sleep. 12 years of marriage, and I'd never seen her lie so effortlessly. In the morning, I called Beck. I need to upgrade the security system, I said. What kind of upgrade? The kind that captures audio. Beck was quiet for a moment. Audio recording gets tricky, legally speaking. It's my house, my property. Fair enough. When do you want me to come by? Today. Mira's at work until late. The usual late night? Something like that. Beck arrived at noon with a toolbox full of new equipment. We'd known each other since high school, when we'd both boxed at Mickey's gym on the south side. He'd gone into private security after a stint in the military. I'd become an electrician. Different paths, but we'd stayed close. "You want to tell me what this is really about?" he asked, while installing a new microphone system in the living room. "Insurance," I said. "You never know what you might need to prove." He gave me a long look, but didn't press. That was Beck, loyal to a fault and smart enough to know when not to ask questions. "These new mics will pick up conversations from anywhere in the house," he explained. "Everything gets uploaded to the cloud automatically. You'll have access through the same app." "What about the basement?" "Already covered. I installed audio down there when I set up the original system." We spent the afternoon upgrading every room. When Beck finished, I had complete audio and visual surveillance of my own home, perfectly legal since I owned the property and lived there myself. "One more thing," I said, as Beck packed up his tools. "I need you to run a background check on someone." "Official or unofficial?" "Unofficial. I just want to know who I'm dealing with." I handed him a slip of paper with Jace Arnell's name and address. "I'll have something for you by tomorrow," Beck said. "You sure you're okay, man? You seem different." "I'm fine. Just being careful." After Beck left, I tested the new system. Crystal clear audio from every room, automatically synced with the video feeds. I could monitor everything from my phone, laptop, or the desktop computer in my basement. My phone buzzed with the now familiar text from Mira. "Another late night. Janet wants to review the Henderson depositions again. Don't wait up." I typed back, "Work hard. I love you." 3 little dots appeared, then disappeared. Finally, "Love you too." At 6:30 p.m., the GPS tracker showed Jace's BMW leaving his office building. Instead of heading to a restaurant, it went straight to his apartment. 20 minutes later, a second signal appeared on my tracker, Mira's Honda parked in the same building. I opened a beer and settled in to wait. The new audio system would capture everything when they returned to our house. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was regaining control of the situation. My phone rang at 8:45 p.m. Mrs. Lacey again. "Trent, dear, I hope I'm not bothering you." "Not at all, Mrs. Lacey. I just wanted you to know that I saw that same car in your driveway again last night. The dark sedan. I'm starting to think you should have a conversation with Mira about her work friends." "I appreciate your concern." "Of course. Oh, and I took a picture this time, just in case you needed it for, well, for anything." My grip tightened on the phone. "A picture?" "Just of the car and license plate. You never know when documentation might come in handy." Mrs. Lacey was turning out to be a more valuable ally than I'd expected. "Could you email that to me?" I asked. "Certainly. I'll send it right over." The photo arrived 5 minutes later. A perfect shot of Jace's BMW in our driveway, timestamp clearly visible. Mrs. Lacey had even captured part of the license plate. I forwarded the image to my personal cloud storage, adding it to the growing file of evidence. Screenshots, GPS logs, timestamps, photographs. I was building an airtight case. The tracker showed both cars leaving Jace's apartment at 10:15 p.m. They were heading back to our neighborhood, probably for their usual goodbye routine in our driveway. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom and arranged myself under the covers, laptop hidden beside the bed. The new audio system would capture everything through my headphones. At 10:47 p.m., I heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Then voices, Mira's laugh, followed by a man's deeper chuckle. "Tomorrow night?" Jace's voice came through crystal clear. "Same time," Mira replied. "Trent never questions my work schedule." Lucky for us, though I'm getting tired of these quick goodbyes. "I know, but we have to be careful, at least until I figure out my next move." My next move. The phrase hit me like a punch to the gut. "You're really going to leave him?" Jace asked. Eventually. I just need to make sure I get my fair share of everything first. The house, his retirement account, everything we've built together. And then we can stop sneaking around. Mira agreed. I heard the sound of kissing, followed by car doors closing. Jace's BMW pulled away, and Mira's key turned in the front door. I closed my eyes and controlled my breathing, feigning sleep as my wife of 12 years climbed into bed beside me, fresh from planning my financial destruction. But Mira had made one critical mistake. She'd forgotten to ask about the security cameras, and I'd forgotten to mention them. The next morning, Mira left for work with a spring in her step that I hadn't seen in months. She even hummed while making coffee, probably already mentally spending my retirement money with her new boyfriend. I waited until her Honda disappeared around the corner before calling Beck. "Got that background check you wanted," he said. "Jace Arnell's got some interesting history." "I'm listening." "Business consultant, like you said, but he's been through 3 companies in 5 years. Each time he left under mysterious circumstances. No lawsuits, but plenty of whispers about inappropriate relationships with married colleagues. He's done this before. Looks like it. Guy's got a type. Successful women with something to lose. I also found out he's got an ex-wife who might be interested in talking." "What do you mean?" "Divorce was finalized 8 months ago. She accused him of infidelity in the paperwork but couldn't prove it. Name's Patricia Arnell, lives across town." I wrote down the address Beck gave me. "Anything else?" "His consulting business is mostly smoke and mirrors. Fancy website, expensive office, but very few actual clients. Makes me wonder how he affords that lifestyle." "Maybe he's got other sources of income." "Maybe. You want me to dig deeper?" "Not yet, but keep the file handy." After hanging up, I reviewed the audio recording from the previous night. Hearing Mira discuss our marriage like a business transaction she was planning to dissolve made my stomach turn, but it also crystallized my resolve. She wanted to play games? Fine. I'd been underestimated my whole life, by teachers, bosses, even my own wife. Time to show everyone what the quiet electrician could really do. I drove to Patricia Arnell's address, a modest townhouse in a middle-class neighborhood that screamed recent divorce. The lawn needed attention, and paint was peeling from the front steps. Patricia answered the door wearing yoga pants and a suspicious expression. She was attractive in a tired way, with the look of someone who'd been through a difficult few years. "Mrs. Arnell? My name's Trent Bradshaw. I was hoping to talk to you about your ex-husband." Her expression shifted from suspicion to interest. "What about him?" "I think he's involved with my wife." She studied my face for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in, I'll make coffee." Patricia's living room was sparse but clean, with moving boxes still stacked in one corner. Divorce papers sat on the coffee table next to a laptop and a half-empty wine glass. "How long have you suspected?" she asked, returning with 2 steaming mugs. "About a week, but looking back, the signs were there for months." "They always are." Patricia settled into the chair across from me. "Jace is very good at making women feel special, right up until he gets bored and moves on to the next target." "How long were you married?" 4 years. Best and worst 4 years of my life." She sipped her coffee and studied me. "What kind of evidence do you have?" I showed her the photos from the hotel, the GPS tracking data, and some of the security footage. Patricia's expression grew darker with each image. "That's his pattern exactly," she said. "Expensive restaurants, nice hotels, lots of public affection. He made me feel like the most important woman in the world." "What changed?" I started asking questions about his work. The money never added up. He claimed to be this successful consultant, but I never saw any actual clients. When I pushed for answers, he got defensive. "Did you ever find out where the money came from?" Patricia hesitated, then walked to her laptop. "I've been documenting everything since our divorce. Call it therapy." She showed me a detailed spreadsheet tracking Jace's finances over their marriage. The numbers were revealing. Large cash deposits every few months, always followed by expensive purchases or lavish trips. "I think he targets women for more than just romance," Patricia said. "I think he's running some kind of long-term con." "What do you mean?" "Look at the pattern. He gets involved with successful women, gains their trust, then slowly starts borrowing money or asking for business investments. Small amounts at first, then larger ones." I studied the spreadsheet more carefully. "How much did he get from you?" $38,000 over 2 years, always with promises to pay it back, always with some sob story about cash flow problems. My chest tightened. Mira had access to our joint accounts, our savings, everything we'd built together. If Jace was running a financial scam. "Has your wife mentioned any money issues?" Patricia asked, reading my expression. "Not yet. But they're planning something. I heard them talking about my assets." Patricia nodded grimly. "That's how it starts. First, he gets them emotionally invested. Then, he starts planting seeds about their current relationship being unfulfilling. Finally, he positions himself as the solution to all their problems. If only they had the resources to start fresh." "Did you ever report him?" "To who? It wasn't technically fraud. I gave him the money willingly, and I had no proof he was seeing other women during our marriage." I thought about the security footage, the GPS tracking, the detailed timeline I'd been building. "What if you had proof?" Patricia's eyes lit up. "What kind of proof?" I showed her more of the surveillance data, explaining the audio recordings and the comprehensive documentation I'd been gathering. "This is incredible," she said, scrolling through the timestamps. "I never had anything close to this level of evidence." "The question is, what do we do with it?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment, staring at the photos of Jace and Mira together. "I want him to pay for what he did to me, to us, to however many other women he's manipulated." "I'm not looking for revenge," I lied smoothly. "I just want to protect myself financially and make sure the truth comes out." "Of course." Patricia smiled, but there was steel in her eyes. "What did you have in mind?" We spent the next 2 hours planning. Patricia had contacts at Jace's previous employers, women who might be willing to share their own experiences. I had comprehensive surveillance data and the ability to monitor his current activities. Together, we could build a case that went far beyond simple infidelity. "There's something else," Patricia said as I prepared to leave. "Jace has a tell when he's lying. He touches his left ear. Watch for it next time you see him." "You think I should confront him?" "Eventually. But not until we have everything documented. Men like Jace are dangerous when they feel cornered." I drove home with my mind racing. The situation was more complex than I'd initially realized, but that also meant more opportunities to expose the truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Mira. "Working late again. Janet wants to prep for tomorrow's hearing." I checked the GPS tracker. Jace's BMW was parked at his apartment building, and Mira's Honda was right beside it. Instead of responding to her text, I called Felix Roord, an attorney I'd met through work. Felix specialized in divorce cases and had a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. "Trent, good to hear from you. How's married life?" "That's actually why I'm calling. I need some legal advice." Oh. What kind of advice?" "The confidential kind. Can we meet?" "Sure. How about tomorrow morning? My office, 9 a.m. I'll be there." That evening, I set up a new routine. Instead of waiting helplessly for Mira to come home with her lies, I monitored the surveillance feeds from my basement workshop. The audio system let me hear everything happening in our house, while the GPS tracker showed me exactly where she really was. Knowledge was power, and I was accumulating both. At 11:30 p.m., both cars started moving toward our neighborhood. I climbed upstairs and got into bed, laptop hidden under the covers. The driveway cameras captured their usual goodbye routine, but this time I was ready with the audio system. Tomorrow's Saturday, Jace said. We could spend the whole day together. I wish, but Trent's home on weekends. Tell him you're going shopping with friends. I've used that excuse too many times lately. He's starting to ask questions. My wife's voice carried a note of frustration that I'd never heard before. Maybe it's time to accelerate our timeline, Jace suggested. What do you mean? I mean, stop waiting for the perfect moment. File for divorce, take your half of everything, and move on with your life. It's not that simple. Trent's not stupid. If I file suddenly, he'll get suspicious and start hiding assets. So we make sure there's nothing left to hide. How? Leave that to me. I know people who specialize in asset recovery. Asset recovery. That sounded ominous. I don't want to hurt him financially, Mira said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Sweetheart, you can't build a new life while protecting your old one. Sometimes you have to choose. I heard more kissing, then car doors closing. Mira came inside and went straight to the bathroom for her usual post-cheating shower. When she climbed into bed, I pretended to wake up. How was work? I asked sleepily. Fine. Janet's case is getting complicated. Maybe you should invite Janet over for dinner sometime. I'd love to meet her. Mira went very still beside me. She's very busy. Of course she is. I rolled over and listened to my wife's breathing, knowing she was lying awake trying to figure out if I suspected anything. Let her wonder. The game was just beginning. The next morning, I met Felix Roard at his downtown office. Felix was in his 50s, with silver hair and the kind of sharp suit that screamed expensive legal fees. His office walls were covered with diplomas and photos of him shaking hands with judges and politicians. So, he said, settling behind his massive oak desk, what kind of marital problems are we talking about? I laid out everything: the surveillance footage, audio recordings, GPS tracking data, and my conversation with Patricia Arnell. Felix listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. This is comprehensive, he said when I finished. Almost too comprehensive. What do you mean? I mean, you've got enough evidence to prove infidelity 10 times over. The question is, what's your end game? I want to protect my assets and make sure Mira doesn't get rewarded for cheating. Fair enough. But there's something else going on here, isn't there? Felix had been practicing family law for 30 years. He could read people like court documents. She's planning to take me for everything I'm worth, I said. I heard her discussing it with her boyfriend. They're talking about asset recovery specialists. Ah. Felix leaned back in his chair. So this isn't just about infidelity. It's about financial survival. Exactly. Well, the good news is that adultery still matters in divorce proceedings, especially when it comes to asset division. The bad news is that your surveillance methods might be legally questionable. How so? Recording conversations without consent gets tricky, even in your own home. We'll need to be careful about how we use that evidence. Felix spent the next hour explaining my options. I could file for divorce immediately, using the surveillance evidence to support claims of adultery, or I could wait and gather more evidence, building an even stronger case. There's a third option, Felix said. We could let them make the first move, then respond with overwhelming evidence of their misconduct. What do you mean? If Mira files for divorce first, she'll have to make financial claims and asset demands. That's when we reveal everything. The affair, the financial planning, the whole conspiracy. Makes her look like a scheming adulteress instead of a wronged wife. And Jace? That's where things get interesting. If he's running a pattern of financial manipulation, we might be able to pursue civil claims against him separately. I left Felix's office with a clear strategy. Let Mira and Jace think they were in control while I documented everything. When they finally made their move, I'd be ready with enough evidence to bury them both. My phone buzzed as I walked to my truck. Going shopping with Jennifer today, back this evening. Jennifer was Mira's college roommate who lived 3 states away. I checked the GPS tracker. Mira's Honda was parked at Jace's apartment building. Instead of going home, I drove to Mickey's gym on the south side. I hadn't been there in months, but I needed to clear my head and talk to someone who understood conflict. Mickey Torino had been running the gym for 40 years. He'd trained professional boxers, police officers, and guys like me who just needed somewhere to work out their frustrations. Mickey was in his 70s now, but he still moved like a fighter. "Trent!" he called out when I walked in. "Where the heck have you been?" Life got complicated, Mickey. It always does. That's why we have heavy bags. I spent an hour hitting the bag, working out months of suppressed anger and frustration. Mickey watched from his usual perch behind the front counter, occasionally shouting corrections to my form. "You're fighting angry," he said when I finally stopped. "Angry fighters make mistakes." Sometimes anger is justified. Sometimes, but angry fighters also get sloppy. They telegraph their punches, drop their guard, go for the knockout instead of setting it up properly. Mickey had been giving me the same advice since I was 16 years old. What would you do if someone was trying to destroy your life? I'd make sure I destroyed theirs first, but I'd do it smart, not angry. How? Same way you win a boxing match against a better opponent. You study their weaknesses, you set traps, and you wait for the perfect moment to strike. I left the gym feeling more focused. Mickey was right. I needed to be strategic, not emotional. That afternoon I called Patricia Arnell. "I've been thinking about our conversation," I said. "Do you still have contacts at Jace's previous employers?" "A few. Why?" "I want to know if there were other women, other victims. I can make some calls. What are you planning?" "I'm going to give Jace enough rope to hang himself." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Be careful, Trent. Jace is charming, but he's also manipulative. Don't underestimate him." "I won't." That evening, I prepared for Mira's return. The surveillance system was recording everything, and I had a new plan to test just how far she was willing to go. She came home at 8:30 p.m., carrying shopping bags from expensive stores I knew she hadn't visited. "How was shopping with Jennifer?" I asked. "Great, she's doing well. Says hi." "That's nice. I was thinking we should plan a trip to visit her soon." Mira's face went pale. "Oh, she's very busy with work right now. Maybe later." "Of course." I pretended to watch television while Mira went upstairs to shower. Through my phone's surveillance app, I watched her hide the shopping bags in the back of our closet, bags that were obviously empty props for her cover story. My phone buzzed with a text from Beck. "Got some interesting information about your friend Jace. Can we meet tomorrow?" "Absolutely. What kind of information?" "The kind that might change everything." Sunday morning, I met Beck at a diner near the river. He looked unusually serious as he slid a manila folder across the table. "I did some more digging into Jace Arnell's background," he said. "Found some things that didn't show up in the initial search." I opened the folder. Inside were bank records, credit reports, and what looked like surveillance photos. "How did you get this?" "I still have friends in certain places. Jace Arnell isn't just a serial cheater. He's running a sophisticated long-term con." Beck walked me through the documents. Over the past 5 years, Jace had systematically targeted and financially exploited at least 6 different women. The pattern was always the same: establish a romantic relationship, gain financial trust, then gradually extract money through various schemes. "The amounts vary," Beck explained, "but we're talking about a total of over $200,000. Have any of these women reported him? That's the genius of his system. He never technically commits fraud. Everything's voluntary. The women give him money willingly, usually believing they're investing in their future together." "What happens when they figure out they've been conned?" "Most are too embarrassed to report it. The few who tried to pursue legal action found out that proving emotional manipulation is nearly impossible." I studied the surveillance photos. They showed Jace with different women over the years, always following the same pattern of expensive dates and intimate gestures. There's something else, Beck said. I think Jace might be targeting Mira for more than just money. What do you mean? Your wife has access to confidential legal information, right? Client files, case strategies, settlement amounts. The implication hit me like a physical blow. You think he's after inside information? I think Jace Arnell is a lot more dangerous than either of us realized. I drove home with my mind racing. If Beck was right, Mira wasn't just cheating, she was potentially compromising her entire legal career. That afternoon, I decided to test my theory. I set up my laptop in the living room and started researching Jace's business connections, making sure to speak my findings aloud for the surveillance system to record. Interesting, I said to myself, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. Jace Arnell's consulting firm has connections to 3 companies that are currently involved in lawsuits handled by Mira's firm. I waited to see if this information would make its way to Mira. If Jace was pumping her for inside information, my little revelation should trigger some kind of response. I didn't have to wait long. At 6:30 p.m., Mira's phone rang. She stepped outside to take the call, but the outdoor microphones Beck had installed captured every word. What do you mean he's asking questions? Mira's voice was tight with anxiety. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Mira's responses told me everything I needed to know. No, I haven't told him anything about your business. Why would I? A pause. Of course I trust you, but maybe we should be more careful. Another pause. I don't know what he suspects. He's been acting strange lately. When Mira came back inside, her face was flushed and her hands were shaking slightly. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, just work stuff. Anything I can help with? No, it's confidential client information. I nodded sympathetically, but inside, I was celebrating. Mira had just confirmed that she was sharing confidential information with Jace, which meant I now had evidence of professional misconduct in addition to adultery. That night, I lay in bed, listening to my wife toss and turn beside me. She was finally starting to realize that her perfect plan might not be so perfect after all, but she had no idea how much trouble she was really in. Because tomorrow, I was going to start fighting back. Monday morning, I called in sick again and drove straight to Patricia Arnell's townhouse. She answered the door with coffee already brewing and a determined look in her eyes. I made those calls, she said without preamble. You were right. There are other victims. She led me to her kitchen table, which was covered with handwritten notes and printed emails. I reached out to 3 women from Jace's past. 2 of them agreed to talk. Patricia introduced me via speakerphone to Monica Chen, a real estate agent from Chicago who'd been involved with Jace 2 years earlier. He cost me $45,000, Monica said, her voice tight with anger, convinced me to invest in his consulting expansion, then disappeared when I started asking for returns. Did you report him? I asked. I tried, but everything was documented as personal loans between romantic partners. The police said it was a civil matter, and my lawyer said proving fraud would be nearly impossible. The second woman, Rebecca Torres, had a similar story. Jace had romanced her for 8 months, gradually extracting money for various business opportunities before moving on to his next target. The worst part, Rebecca said, is that he made me feel like it was my fault when things went wrong, like I wasn't supportive enough or I was too suspicious. After the calls ended, Patricia and I sat in silence for a moment. He's done this to at least 8 women that we know of, she said finally. Probably more. What if we could get them all together? Present a united front? You mean like a class action lawsuit? I mean like a coordinated exposure campaign, social media, local news, professional networks, make it impossible for him to operate. Patricia's eyes lit up. I like the way you think. We spent the next hour planning a comprehensive strategy to expose Jace's pattern of manipulation. Patricia would coordinate with his other victims, while I continued gathering evidence of his current scheme with Mira. There's something else we should consider, Patricia said as I prepared to leave. If Jace is really after inside information from Mira's law firm, there might be regulatory bodies that would be interested in that. Like who? The State Bar Association, for starters. Lawyers who share confidential client information can lose their licenses. The implication was clear. If I played this right, I could destroy both Mira's career and her relationship simultaneously. I drove home to find a message from Felix Roard on my answering machine. Trent, call me back. I've got some interesting news about asset protection strategies. When I reached Felix, his voice carried a note of excitement. I've been thinking about your situation, he said. There are some proactive steps we can take to protect your assets before Mira makes her move. What kind of steps? Legal ones. We can establish trusts, transfer certain assets to protected accounts, even create business entities that would be difficult for her to access in a divorce. Is that ethical? Completely. You're not hiding assets. You're restructuring them for legitimate business and estate planning purposes. Felix explained that many of our joint assets could be legally reorganized in ways that would limit Mira's access during divorce proceedings. The key was acting before she filed any paperwork. How long would this take? 2 weeks, maybe 3. But we need to move fast. Do it. That afternoon, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I called Mira at work, making sure to sound casual and loving. Hey, sweetheart, I was thinking we should have dinner out tonight, just the two of us. Oh, I have to work late again. Come on, you've been working every night for weeks. One dinner won't hurt. Trent, you don't understand the pressure I'm under right now. Then help me understand. Tell me about this Henderson case that's consuming your life. Silence on the other end of the line. It's complicated, she said finally. I'm sure it is. Maybe talking about it would help. I can't discuss client confidentiality issues. Of course not, but you could tell me about the general legal principles involved. More silence. I really do have to work late, she said. Maybe tomorrow night? Sure, sweetheart. Work hard. After hanging up, I checked the GPS tracker. Mira's Honda was in the parking garage of her law firm, exactly where she claimed to be. But Jace's BMW was parked 3 blocks away. I drove downtown and positioned myself with a view of both vehicles. At 6:15 p.m., Mira emerged from her building and walked directly to Jace's car. They drove to a restaurant I'd never heard of, an intimate place in a part of town where they were unlikely to encounter anyone we knew. Instead of following them, I drove to Mira's law firm. The building's security was minimal, a single guard at the front desk who was more interested in his smartphone than monitoring visitors. I took the elevator to the 14th floor, where Mira worked. The hallways were empty, but several offices still had lights on. I found Mira's office and peered through the glass door. Her computer was still logged in, with several case files open on the screen. One of them caught my attention immediately. Henderson versus Morrison Industries, the case she'd been using as cover for her late nights. I took photos of the computer screen with my phone, documenting the case details and timeline. Then I noticed something interesting. The Henderson case had been settled 3 weeks ago. Mira had been lying about working late on a case that no longer existed. My phone buzzed with a text. Dinner running long, don't wait up, love you. I typed back, love you too. Work hard on that Henderson case. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before she finally responded. Will do. On my way home, I stopped at an electronics store and bought additional surveillance equipment, tiny cameras that could be hidden in everyday objects. If Mira and Jace were planning something, I wanted to document every conversation. That night, I installed micro cameras in the living room, kitchen, and Mira's home office. The devices were virtually invisible and connected wirelessly to my monitoring system in the basement. At 11:45 p.m., the driveway cameras captured Mira and Jace's usual goodbye routine. But this time, their conversation was different. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything? Jace asked. I don't think so, but he's been asking more questions about work. What kind of questions? About the Henderson case. He wanted to have dinner tonight to discuss it. That's not good. The Henderson case was settled weeks ago. I know. I think I covered it. But we need to be more careful. Maybe it's time to accelerate our timeline. What do you mean? I mean, stop playing games and file for divorce. The longer we wait, the more suspicious he might become. But we haven't finished setting up the financial arrangements. We have enough. Trust me. I heard kissing, then car doors closing. Mira came inside and went straight to her home office, where one of my new cameras captured her opening her laptop and accessing client files. She spent 20 minutes copying documents to a USB drive, then deleted her browser history and closed the laptop. When she came to bed, I pretended to be asleep while my mind raced. Mira wasn't just sharing information with Jace. She was actively stealing confidential client data. The next morning, I called Felix Roard with an update. She's copying client files, I told him. I have video evidence of her transferring documents to external storage. That's a serious ethics violation, Felix said. Potentially criminal, depending on what kind of information she's taking. What should I do? Document everything, but don't interfere yet. We want to catch them in the act of using the stolen information. And if they file for divorce first? Then we destroy them with evidence of professional misconduct, theft of confidential information, and conspiracy to commit fraud. I spent the rest of the day reviewing surveillance footage and organizing evidence. The case against Mira and Jace was becoming stronger by the hour. But I wanted more than just legal victory. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to have their lives systematically dismantled by someone they'd underestimated. That afternoon, I called Beck with a special request. I need you to help me send a message, I said. What kind of message? The kind that lets them know they're not as clever as they think they are. Beck was quiet for a moment. What did you have in mind? I want Jace to know that someone's watching him. Nothing illegal, nothing threatening, just enough to make him paranoid. I can work with that. Good, because it's time to start playing offense. The game was about to change, and Mira and Jace had no idea what was coming for them. Beck called me at 7 a.m. with news that made my morning coffee taste like victory. Your boy Jace got a surprise visitor last night, he said. Someone left a manila envelope under his windshield wiper. What kind of envelope? The kind containing photos of him with your wife, along with a note that said, "Smile, you're on camera." No signature, no threats, just a friendly reminder that he's being watched. I couldn't help but grin. How did he react? Security cameras in his parking garage caught him freaking out. Spent 20 minutes checking his car for tracking devices, then called someone on his phone. Looked pretty agitated. Perfect. There's more. I had a friend run the license plates of cars visiting his building over the past month. Guess whose Honda shows up on the list? Mira's. 17 different occasions. Your wife's been spending a lot of time at Loverboy's apartment. I added this information to my growing evidence file. Between the surveillance footage, GPS tracking, audio recordings, and now visitor logs, I had enough documentation to prove the affair beyond any reasonable doubt. My phone rang as I was reviewing the latest batch of evidence. Mira's voice was tight with anxiety. Trent? I need to ask you something. Sure, sweetheart. What's up? Have you been checking up on me lately? What do you mean? I mean, following me or having someone follow me, asking questions about my work schedule. I let silence stretch between us for a few seconds. Why would I do that? I don't know, it's just some weird things have been happening lately. What kind of weird things? Never mind. I'm probably being paranoid. Are you okay? You sound stressed. I'm fine, just work pressure. Maybe you should take a vacation. We could go somewhere together, just the two of us. I can't right now. Too many cases pending. Of course. Well, if you need to talk about anything, I'm here. After hanging up, I checked the GPS tracker. Mira's Honda was parked at Jace's apartment building again, even though she was supposed to be at work. I called Patricia Arnell with an update on our psychological warfare campaign. "It's working," I told her. "They're starting to panic." "Good. I've been coordinating with Jace's other victims. We're planning a coordinated social media campaign to expose his pattern of behavior." "When?" "Next week. Monica's putting together a timeline of his activities over the past 5 years. Rebecca's writing a detailed account of his manipulation techniques. I'm handling the legal research." "What about evidence?" "We've got photos, financial records, and testimony from 8 different women. It's going to be comprehensive. Make sure you include his current activities with Mira. I can provide surveillance footage and documentation of their relationship." "Are you sure you want your personal business made public?" "I'm sure. Mira made her choice when she decided to betray our marriage. Now she gets to live with the consequences." That afternoon, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I called Mira's law firm and asked to speak with her supervisor, claiming to be a potential client with questions about the Henderson case. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said, "but the Henderson matter was resolved several weeks ago. Would you like me to connect you with another attorney?" Actually, I was specifically referred to Mira Ardell. She's been working on Henderson-related issues recently. "I think there might be some confusion. Mrs. Ardell hasn't been assigned to the Henderson case in over a month." "Interesting. Could you tell me what cases she is currently handling?" "I'm sorry, but I can't discuss attorney assignments with non-clients." I hung up with confirmation of what I already knew. Mira had been lying about her work schedule for weeks. That evening, I prepared for the final phase of my evidence-gathering operation. I'd installed a new camera in our bedroom, hidden inside a digital alarm clock that looked completely ordinary. At 11:30 p.m., Mira came home from another late night at the office. She went straight to her computer and spent an hour copying more client files to her USB drive. But this time, she also made several phone calls. "The timeline's accelerating," she said to someone, presumably Jace. "I think he's getting suspicious." I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Mira's responses told me everything I needed to know. "I've got most of the financial documents we discussed: bank statements, retirement account information, property records." A pause. "Yes, I copied the Morrison Industries settlement details. The final payout was larger than they announced publicly." Another pause. "I know it's risky, but the information is worth it. Your contact in Chicago is willing to pay $50,000 for insider details on upcoming settlements. My wife wasn't just cheating and planning to divorce me. She was selling confidential legal information to third parties." "Tomorrow night," Mira continued, "we'll finalize everything, and I'll file the paperwork on Friday." Divorce papers. She was planning to file for divorce in 3 days. "I love you too," she said before hanging up. I lay in the dark, listening to my wife of 12 years prepare to destroy my life while profiting from stolen information. The betrayal was complete, but so was my preparation. The next morning, I called Felix Roord with an emergency meeting request. "They're moving faster than we anticipated," I told him. "Mira's filing for divorce on Friday. Are you ready?" "More than ready. I've got evidence of adultery, theft of confidential information, conspiracy to commit fraud, and sale of insider legal information to unauthorized third parties." Felix whistled softly. "That's not just grounds for divorce. That's potential criminal activity." "What's our next move?" "We file first, today, and we include a motion for emergency asset protection based on evidence of your wife's misconduct." "Do it." Felix spent the morning preparing divorce papers that would blindside Mira completely. Instead of being the wronged wife seeking her fair share, she'd be the defendant facing accusations of professional misconduct and potential criminal charges. "I'm also recommending that we provide copies of your evidence to the State Bar Association," Felix said. "What Mira's doing could result in disbarment." "And Jace?" "We'll file a separate civil suit against him for intentional interference with marriage and conspiracy to commit fraud." At 2 p.m., A process server delivered divorce papers to Mira at her law firm. I tracked her reaction through the GPS system. Her Honda stayed parked at work for 6 hours straight, suggesting she was in crisis mode. My phone started ringing at 8:15 p.m. "Trent, we need to talk." Mira's voice was shaking. "About what?" "About these papers you filed. About the accusations you're making." "What about them?" They're completely false. I've never stolen confidential information. I've never shared client details with anyone." "Are you sure about that?" "Of course I'm sure." "Then you won't mind if we review your computer files and phone records during discovery." Silence. "Mira?" "I'm here." "Good, because we have a lot to discuss." Can we work this out? Without lawyers?" "I don't think so. See, I've been documenting your activities for quite some time now. The late nights, the mysterious work projects, the new friend you've been spending time with." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Jace Arnell. I'm talking about stolen client files. I'm talking about selling confidential information. Should I continue?" The line went quiet for so long, I thought she'd hung up. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. "Long enough." "What do you want?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to realize that the quiet electrician you thought you could manipulate and discard is smarter than you gave him credit for. Trent, please. I want you to experience what it feels like to have your life systematically destroyed by someone you underestimated." I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. Because Mira and Jace were about to discover that revenge, when properly planned and executed, was a dish best served with comprehensive documentation and legal representation. The quiet electrician was done being quiet. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. I'd slept better than I had in months, knowing that today would bring the resolution I'd been working toward. My phone had 17 missed calls from Mira and 12 from a number I didn't recognize, probably Jace. I deleted all the voicemails without listening to them. At 9 a.m., Felix Roard called with an update. "The State Bar Association is very interested in your evidence," he said. "They're opening a formal investigation into Mira's conduct." "How long will that take?" "Could be weeks, could be months. But they've already suspended her access to confidential client databases pending review." "What about the civil suit against Jace?" "Process server found him this morning. He's been officially notified of the fraud and conspiracy charges." I checked the GPS tracker out of habit. Jace's BMW was parked at his apartment building, and it had been stationary since yesterday evening. Mira's Honda was in our driveway. She was home, waiting for me. I took my time driving back from Felix's office, stopping at Mickey's gym for one final conversation with my old mentor. "You look different," Mickey said when I walked in. "Focused. The fight's almost over." "Did you win?" "I'm about to find out." Mickey studied my face with the practiced eye of someone who'd trained fighters for 4 decades. "Remember what I taught you about finishing combinations. You don't stop throwing punches until your opponent can't get back up." "I'll remember." I drove home to find Mira's Honda in the driveway and a black sedan parked across the street, probably Jace, trying to provide moral support from a safe distance. Mira was waiting in the living room, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Her eyes were red from crying, and her usually perfect hair was disheveled. "We need to talk," she said as soon as I walked in. "I'm listening." "This has gotten out of hand. The accusations you're making, the legal papers, it's destroying both our lives." "Your life," I corrected. "My life is just getting started." "Trent, please. I made mistakes, but we can work through this." "What kind of mistakes?" She looked down at her hands. I got involved with someone I shouldn't have." "Jace Arnell." "Yes." "And?" "And I shared some information I shouldn't have shared." "What kind of information?" "Client details, settlement amounts, nothing that hurt anyone." "Nothing that hurt anyone except your professional ethics and our marriage." Mira looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I know I messed up. But filing for divorce involving lawyers, it doesn't have to be this way. You're right. It didn't have to be this way. Then let's fix it. How do you suggest we do that? We could go to counseling. I could end things with Jace. We could start over. I sat down across from her, maintaining eye contact. Tell me about the $50,000. Her face went white. What $50,000? The payment you were expecting for selling Morrison Industries settlement information to Jace's contact in Chicago? I don't know what you're talking about. Mira, I have recordings of your phone conversations. I have video of you copying client files. I have documentation of every lie you've told over the past 2 months. She stared at me in shock. You've been recording me? I've been protecting myself. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. This is my house, and I'm a party to every conversation we've had. But the phone calls were made from my house, using my wireless network while I was present. Perfectly legal. Mira stood up and began pacing. You can't use any of that in court. It's invasion of privacy. Felix roared disagrees. So does the State Bar Association. The State Bar Association? They're very interested in lawyers who sell confidential client information. Apparently, it's grounds for disbarment. Mira sank back into her chair, the reality of her situation finally hitting her. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want you to understand that I'm not the fool you thought I was. I never thought you were a fool. You thought I was someone you could manipulate and discard when you found something better. That's not true. Then explain the asset recovery specialists you and Jace discussed. Explain your plan to take half of everything I've worked for. We were just talking. You were planning to destroy my financial future while building yours with stolen information and insurance money. A car door slammed outside, and through the window I saw Jace walking up our front steps. He looked nervous but determined. You called him? I asked. I thought maybe if we all talked together. The doorbell rang. This should be interesting, I said, walking to answer it. Jace stood on my front porch wearing an expensive suit and what he probably thought was a confident expression. Up close, he was smaller than he'd appeared in the surveillance footage, maybe 5'10", with the soft build of someone who spent more time in boardrooms than gyms. Trent, he said, extending his hand. I think we need to have a conversation. I looked at his outstretched hand, but didn't take it. About what? About resolving this situation in a way that works for everyone. Come in. Jace walked into our living room and took a seat next to Mira. They looked like what they were, two people who'd been caught in a conspiracy and were now trying to minimize the damage. Look, Jace said. I know this is awkward, but we're all adults here. Mira and I have feelings for each other, and I think the mature thing is to handle this divorce amicably. Amicably, I repeated. Right. No need for accusations or legal battles. Just a clean split that lets everyone move on with their lives. What about the stolen client information? Jace's left hand moved unconsciously toward his ear, the tell Patricia had warned me about. I don't know anything about stolen information, he said. What about the $50,000 you were planning to pay for Morrison Industries settlement details? I think there's been some misunderstanding. What about Monica Chen, Rebecca Torres, Patricia Arnell? Jace's confident expression cracked. What about them? What about the $200,000 you've stolen from women over the past 5 years? That's ridiculous. I've never stolen anything from anyone. I pulled out my phone and opened the surveillance app. Would you like to review the recordings of your conversations with Mira? The ones where you discuss timeline acceleration and asset recovery? Jace and Mira exchanged glances. You can't record private conversations without consent, Jace said. I can record conversations that take place on my property, especially when they involve criminal conspiracy. Criminal conspiracy? Mira's voice was barely a whisper. Theft of confidential information, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and in Jace's case, a pattern of financial manipulation spanning multiple victims across several states. Jace stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. You're right. You don't. But you should know that Patricia Arnell and your other victims are coordinating a public exposure campaign. It goes live on social media Monday morning. What kind of exposure campaign? Photos, financial records, testimony from 8 different women, and a complete timeline of your activities. They're calling it the Jace Arnell Files. Jace's face had gone pale. That's defamation. Truth isn't defamation. You can't prove any of this. I opened another app on my phone and showed him the screen. GPS tracking data showing your location during every one of your meetings with Mira. Audio recordings of your conversations about selling client information. Video footage of Mira copying confidential files to USB drives. This is insane, Jace said, but his voice lacked conviction. Patricia was right about your tell, I added. You touch your left ear when you lie. Jace's hand dropped from his ear like he'd been burned. What do you want? Mira asked again. I want you both to understand that actions have consequences. We get it, Jace said. You're angry, but destroying our lives won't fix your marriage. My marriage ended the moment Mira decided to betray it. Now I'm just making sure you both pay the appropriate price. What price? Mira whispered. Professional disgrace, financial ruin, and public humiliation. The same things you were planning for me. I stood up and walked to the window. Beck's truck was parked across the street, and I could see him watching the house. Here's what's going to happen, I said, turning back to face them. Mira, you're going to resign from your law firm before they fire you. You're going to cooperate fully with the Bar Association investigation. And you're going to sign divorce papers that give me everything I'm asking for. And if I don't? Then I release everything to the media, your colleagues, and law enforcement. Your choice. What about me? Jace asked. You're going to disappear, leave town, change careers, start over somewhere else. Because if I see you within 100 miles of here after today, I'll make sure every woman in America knows exactly what kind of predator you are. Jace and Mira sat in stunned silence. You have until Monday to decide, I continued. After that, the evidence goes public regardless of what you choose. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think we're done here. Jace stood up first, his expensive suit wrinkled and his confidence completely shattered. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. Mira followed him toward the door, then stopped and turned back to me. I really did love you, she said quietly. No, you didn't. You loved what I could provide. There's a difference. After they left, I stood in my empty living room and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Beck. Everything okay? Perfect, I typed back. The fight's over. I walked to my basement workshop and began uploading the final batch of evidence files to my cloud storage. On Monday, regardless of what Mira and Jace decided, the truth would become public. But I already knew what they'd choose. Cornered predators always ran when faced with superior force. I'd spent months being underestimated, manipulated, and betrayed. Now Mira and Jace understood what it felt like to have their lives systematically dismantled by someone they'd dismissed as harmless. The quiet electrician had taught them a lesson they'd never forget, and I was just getting started.